Dario Valente stood too close to the table. His shadow covered the waitress, Eliza. The restaurant was completely silent. He wanted to intimidate her. He wanted her to beg for forgiveness. Instead, she waited for him to speak. "Say it again," Dario commanded. His voice was cold, sharp, and deadly. "You mispronounced the Barolo," Eliza replied, her voice steady. She held the empty wine carafe like a shield. "I asked for the Canubi crew," Dario snapped. "It is the Canubi crew," she corrected, her eyes meeting his. "But you said Canobi." "It is Canobi. Say it correctly." Dario's massive bodyguard took a threatening step forward. "Stay back, Marco," Dario ordered. He forced a smile. It was cruel. It was cold. "You just made your last mistake," he told her. Eliza did not flinch. "That's a strange thing to say." "It was just pronunciation." "You don't understand who I am," Dario warned her. "I understood the wine list," she finished. She turned her back, walking toward the kitchen. She walked away from the most feared man on the coast. Dario's jaw locked. The humiliation was absolute. This night was far from over. Eliza slammed the carafe down hard inside the kitchen. The dishwasher stayed. The manager, Giorgio, was already shaking. "You are fired, Eliza," Giorgio whispered, his voice trembling. "He is Dario Valente. He owns this city. He owns this restaurant. He owns a dictionary now," Eliza retorted, ripping off her apron. She needed the money for her university tuition. She needed this job desperately. But she refused to grovel. She would not bow to his arrogance. Out in the dining room, Dario sat motionless. He pulled out his phone. He made a single call. "Find her address," he ordered the caller. "Find her history. I want everything about the waitress." He paused. "Start with the family debt. It is the quickest way to break someone." The public challenge had sealed her fate. A mafia boss cannot tolerate disrespect. Not when the entire room had witnessed it. He stood up slowly. He adjusted his cufflink. "This is not over," Dario promised. "She challenged me. I will take everything she values. She will learn that words have consequences." The conflict was simple. She wanted freedom. He demanded absolute control. Eliza walked out the staff entrance and onto the dark street. Her purse felt light. She had lost 2 shifts' worth of cash. A black Mercedes sedan waited across the narrow road. It was not a taxi. It was waiting for her. Marco, Dario's chief enforcer, stepped out of the shadow. "Ms. Moetti," Marco said. His tone was flat. "I don't work for your boss anymore," Eliza said, not breaking her stride. "He sent you a gift." Marco held out a small, expensive velvet box. It looked like jewelry. "I don't accept gifts from criminals." "Open it first," Marco insisted. Eliza took the box. Her hand did not shake. She snapped the lid open immediately. Inside was no diamond. It was a single, highly polished olive pit. "What is this?" Eliza asked, confused. "A reminder," Marco explained. "Even the smallest thing, overlooked, can break a tooth. He knows where you live, Ms. Moetti." Eliza felt a wave of icy dread. But she controlled her face. She kept the emotion hidden. "Tell him I'm vegetarian," she countered. She snapped the box shut and threw it, hard. The velvet box sailed through the air and bounced off the sedan's pristine leather upholstery. "Tell him to send flowers next time," she finished, walking away quickly. Marco stood perfectly still. He did not retrieve the box. He spoke into his radio. She threw the gift back. She was defiant. Back in his penthouse suite, Dario was listening. He smashed his crystal wine glass against the granite counter. "She has unbelievable courage," Dario muttered. "I hate her courage." He wanted her terrified. He wanted her broken. 3 days later, Eliza was working again. She was at a cheap, busy bistro farther down the coast. It was anonymous. She needed the cash for tuition. The door opened again. The room fell silent. Dario Valente walked in. He was wearing an immaculate suit. He brought the silence of a mausoleum with him. The bistro was not worthy of his attention. He sat at a cramped, cheap 2-person table. He ignored the menu completely. He looked only at Eliza. Bring me the house wine, he demanded. The house wine is vinegar, Eliza warned him. It's €5 a glass. I will decide what is vinegar, Dario said. You already did that, Signor Valente, she replied. She brought him the wine. The cheapest, most acidic red they served. Dario took a single, disgusted sip. He immediately spat it back into the glass. This is an insult to grapes. Send the manager. The manager will just tell you it's sold out, Eliza said, controlling the situation. She was in charge of this game. She was the one who was managing his temper. Dario realized he had come to intimidate her. Instead, he was stuck in her service orbit. He did not eat. He did not drink another drop. He sat there for 2 solid hours. He simply watched her work. He observed her speed. Her efficiency was flawless. He noticed her helping an elderly couple translate their complicated order. He watched her gently refuse a tourist who offered her extra, inappropriate money. Dario felt a flicker of respect. He hated it immediately. He wanted to destroy her, not admire her. She is not afraid, Dario told Marco, who stood sentinel by the door. Fear comes later, boss, Marco answered. I need her to be afraid now. She wastes my time. Dario stood to leave. Pay the bill. Leave a single €1 coin for the tip. Just the coin, boss. Marco questioned. Humiliation is a process, Dario commanded. The next night, Dario returned. This time, he sat at the counter, watching her even closer. Eliza refused to acknowledge his presence, serving other patrons with practiced speed. A large table of loud German tourists began shouting. Their bill was completely wrong. They yelled loudly in German, demanding the manager. The bistro manager froze, intimidated by the foreign language and the volume. Eliza stepped forward calmly. She spoke immediately. Gentlemen, there is a mistake, let me fix it for you, she said, speaking in perfectly fluent, flawless German. She corrected the complex bill. She apologized gently. She handled the entire confrontation in less than 40 seconds. The tourists apologized profusely and left a huge tip. Dario was genuinely shocked. She speaks German, he asked Marco, leaning in. That was not in the intelligence report, Marco confirmed, his own voice tight. Dario's careful planning was already failing. This waitress was a complete unknown. She was hiding pieces of her life. He leaned over the counter, addressing her with cold respect. You are surprisingly talented, Dario admitted. Talent is wasted on the arrogant, Eliza countered instantly. Why are you still a waitress? He pressed. Why are you still watching me? She returned. The blood rushed hot to Dario's ears. She won every single conversational exchange. I came here for the pappardelle al singhiel, Dario announced, changing the subject sharply. He was trying to catch her off guard, trying to appear normal. We don't serve that here, Eliza dismissed him. I was referencing my favorite dish, Dario explained, his voice low and intense. The only place that ever made it right was the old trattoria near the harbor. The one with the green awning. He was probing her, searching for any sign of recognition. Eliza stopped cleaning the counter. She looked directly into his eyes, and a slow, knowing smile spread across her face. It was the first time she looked truly dangerous. That trattoria was owned by the Rossi family, Eliza stated clearly. Dario did not move. It closed down 3 years ago, didn't it? She continued. The family sold the secret recipe for their wild boar ragu before they disappeared entirely. She lowered her voice. It was now a lethal whisper. They sold that precise, unique recipe to your mother, Signor Valente. The bistro was entirely silent again. Dario's face was a mask of cold, absolute shock. This waitress, this server, knew an obscure detail about his family's private business. How could she know about his mother's closely guarded acquisition? How do you know that name? Dario demanded. His question was not a threat, it was sheer panic. Who are you, really? Maybe I understood more than just the wine list, Eliza concluded. You came looking for a mistake to punish. You found one. The true danger had just begun for them both. Dario Valente did not waste time. The second Eliza walked away from the counter, his calm shattered. He leaped over the counter, grabbing the manager. Who is the Rossi family? Dario roared. The manager cowered. The old trattoria, the manager stammered. It's closed, signor. I know it's closed. Dario snarled. He pushed the manager aside. He ran to his car. Marco. Status report now, Dario ordered into the phone. Forget the financial debt. Dig into her heritage. Dario drove back to his penthouse at breakneck speed. His control was failing. This waitress was a hole in his security. She knew secrets only the family inner circle should possess. That meant she was not a waitress. She was an agent. She was a threat. He stormed into his private command center. Renzo, his chief technical analyst, sat surrounded by glowing screens. Renzo was buried deep in Eliza Moetti's digital shadow. Talk to me about the assets, Dario demanded. Renzo spoke quickly, using technical language. We hit a complex offshore trust structure, boss. It's military-grade protection. Dario grabbed the simplified terms. This was the jargon he needed translated. Simplify the jargon, Renzo, Dario warned. What does that mean for her family's old villa? It means you can't touch it, Renzo explained. The asset ownership is hidden behind a Panamanian shell corporation. That corporation is locked by a deed of perpetuity signed by an old judge who died 10 years ago. It's untouchable by normal debt collection. Dario understood. The protection was absolute. It was not mere wealth. This was the protection afforded to other high-level crime families, or perhaps a politician's safety net. Who set up the trust? Dario asked. We don't know, Renzo admitted. The name is redacted. It's an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. It's a ghost account. But whoever established this trust is wealthy enough to defy your legal reach. This was the first hint of Eliza's power. She wasn't just defiant. She was backed by a shadow. Call the owner of that bistro, Dario commanded. Buy the building. Buy the business. Tonight. The next morning, Eliza arrived for her shift at the small bistro. She expected to be fired again. She planned to laugh in the manager's face. Instead, the small staff was gathered outside. They closed early, a cook muttered. Said it's under new management. Eliza pushed the glass door open. The bistro was deserted. Dario Valente was standing inside. He was not wearing a suit. He wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater. He looked devastatingly casual. Where is Giorgio? Eliza asked, her voice calm. Giorgio is retired, Dario said, leaning against the counter. He sold the business overnight. I bought it, Eliza. Eliza felt a cold shock. He had used his power to eliminate her safe haven. He had trapped her. You bought a cheap bistro just to spite me. I bought it because you won't work for anyone else, Dario corrected. You are still employed, Eliza. By me. I quit, she said immediately. Dario shook his head, a smooth, predatory gesture. You can't. Not legally. Giorgio signed you to a new temporary contract at 2 a.m. It's non-negotiable for 6 weeks. You quit, you lose the 6 weeks' pay, plus you forfeit your university deposit. He knew her weakness. He knew she needed that deposit. You are despicable, Eliza stated, without heat or anger. Despicable gets results, Dario countered, walking slowly toward her. I own the bistro. You are my employee. Your salary is now doubled. But you will serve only me. He was now her master. The power dynamic shifted entirely. I won't serve you food, Eliza warned. I don't want food, Dario said, closing the distance between them. I want to watch you. I want to figure out who set up that protection detail. Who shielded your family's assets. He was a foot away. She stood her ground perfectly. I fear no one, Signor Valente, Eliza stated. You should fear me, Dario whispered, his eyes intense. I am the reason people disappear. As she spoke, she moved her hand to adjust her uniform. The movement was fast. But Dario was faster. His eyes caught a flash of white skin beneath her sleeve. A thin, raised line. You have a scar, Dario observed. It was a fact, not a question. Eliza instantly pulled her sleeve down. Her body language shifted from defiant to suddenly protective. It was the first sign of hidden vulnerability he had seen. I was clumsy as a child, She dismissed the observation. That was not a clumsy scar, Dario challenged. That was a knife fight. She refused to answer. She walked past him to the back of the bistro. I need my tuition money, Eliza said. What is my first task? Dario watched her retreat. He tried a different tactic. He switched from boss to charming rogue. He used his infamous handsome smile. Forget the money, Eliza, he tried, his voice softening. I can buy you 20 villas. I can pay for your whole life. Just tell me what you are hiding. He reached out a hand to touch her arm. Eliza snapped around. Her eyes were burning. She recoiled physically. Do not touch me, she said, her voice low. It was pure poison. She did not just avoid romance. She despised human connection. Why? Dario pressed, intrigued. Am I not attractive enough for a simple waitress? You are a snake, Eliza spat out. And snakes should be kept in cages. I treat contact with men like you the same way I treat poison. With extreme caution and immediate rejection. Dario felt a strange thrill. She was the only woman who had ever rejected his charm so violently. Dario dropped the charm. He returned to the predator. Fine. Your first task is immediate, Dario announced. I need a sensitive package delivered across the city. No bodyguards. No cars with tracking devices. You will use a public scooter. A delivery. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Is this a test? It is a necessity, Dario stated. The recipient is highly paranoid. They cannot see my men. Only a neutral party. He gave her a folded piece of paper with an address. The location was a deserted dockyard. The package is in the freezer downstairs, Dario explained. It is a small, heavy cube wrapped in plastic. Do not open it. Do not stop until you get there. Do you understand? Eliza walked past him to the back freezer. She retrieved the package. It felt too cold. It felt dense. She felt the heavy, immediate danger of the situation. As she left, she passed Marco, who was reading a newspaper. She glanced at the reflection of the street in the bistro window. She saw Marco's reflection perfectly. She didn't see him reading a newspaper. She saw him reading a highly encrypted satellite phone. Eliza realized she wasn't the delivery person. She was the bait. She stepped onto the waiting scooter. She put on the cheap helmet. As she pulled out into the narrow alley, she saw a tourist leaning against a stone wall taking photos. He was wearing an old, faded green jacket. Eliza's mind instantly connected the dots. The green jacket was the unofficial color of the Rizzo crime family, Dario's fiercest rivals. The tourist lifted his camera. It wasn't pointed at the picturesque street. It was pointed directly at her. He lifted his hand to his ear. He wasn't taking a photo. He was sending a message. Eliza twisted the scooter throttle. She knew the green jacket was following her. She knew the package in her hand was worth more than her life. She didn't know what was in the package. But she knew the Rizzo family wanted it, and Dario had just used her to draw them out. She was running a high-speed assassination target on a public scooter. And the green jacket was now moving, pulling a shiny object from his coat. Eliza felt the cold steel of the gun barrel. Not literally. But the intention was clear. The man in the green jacket moved too fast for a tourist. He raised the camera, but his focus was the alley wall behind her. He wasn't aiming at her. He was aiming for the scooter's gas line. That meant they wanted the package intact. They wanted her dead second. She swerved hard. The cheap scooter tires squealed. The man's shot missed the fuel line. It hit the stone wall. Stone dust exploded. Eliza felt the sharp sting of debris on her cheek. She didn't panic. Her reaction was instantaneous. She was already trained for this level of danger. This was her hidden identity. The skill set surfaced automatically. She threw the scooter sideways, intentionally crashing it. The bike slid, creating a shower of sparks and a shield. She rolled behind a large industrial recycling bin. The heavy plastic-wrapped cube was still clutched in her hand. It was her only priority. The man in the green jacket emerged from the alley. He moved professionally. He held a small, suppressed pistol. The package, ragazza, he demanded. He spoke perfect, crisp Italian. I only take orders from my boss, Eliza shot back. Your boss is dead if you don't hand it over, the man countered, advancing slowly. Eliza pulled a long, thin object from her sleeve. It wasn't a weapon. It was a reinforced stainless steel chopstick. She held it like a dagger. It looked ridiculous. But it was her only available weapon. She saw her chance. The recycling bin was positioned near a low, wet drain. She used the chopstick to scrape mud and refuse onto the man's shoes. It was petty. It was humiliating. The man flinched slightly, momentarily distracted by the mess. That was all the time Eliza needed. She hurled the heavy package at his face. The density of the cube made it an effective projectile. It struck him hard just above the nose. He stumbled backward, stunned. His gun clattered on the cobblestones. Eliza didn't hesitate. She scrambled over the bin, grabbed the gun, and kicked the man hard in the ribs. She ran immediately toward the docks. She was fast. Faster than expected. She vanished between stacked fishing nets. Back at the bistro, Dario paced furiously. Renzo was watching the tracker feed on the floor. It was a digital map of the city. The signal stopped, Renzo reported. The scooter is down near the old shipyard. Check the cameras, Dario ordered. Did she give up the package? The camera feed flickered on the monitor. It showed the green jacket man staggering, holding his nose. It showed Eliza running, the package still in her hand. Dario stopped pacing. He watched the footage twice. She attacked him with a chopstick, Renzo commented, trying to suppress a laugh. She defeated a trained Rizzo enforcer using trash and a utensil, Dario corrected, his voice tight. She is resourceful. She is not ordinary. He didn't sound angry about the failed ambush. He sounded deeply unsettled. She is making me look like an amateur, Dario muttered. He punched the wall next to the monitor. Not out of anger toward Eliza, but fury at his own failing plan. Marco entered the room, his face grim. The man in the green jacket is captured. He won't talk. But the message is clear. They knew we were coming. They knew because I let them know, Dario confessed, dropping into a chair. He ran a hand over his face. He was exhausted. I am losing control, Marco, Dario admitted softly. This was the insecurity he never showed. This was the first time he confessed a weakness to anyone. I can handle business rivals. I can handle police. But this woman, she moves differently. He looked at the empty spot on the digital map where Eliza should be. I brought her into my orbit to break her, Dario said. But she is breaking my focus. I can't stop thinking about her audacity. How she didn't flinch when I threatened her. Meanwhile, Eliza was moving fast through the dockyard. She knew the area well. This suggested a long, hidden pass near the sea. She found a decommissioned fishing boat named the Siren. She climbed the rusty ladder and dropped onto the deck. She finally opened the package. The freezer cube contained nothing valuable. It was a heavy block of frozen sea salt, shaped and wrapped to look like a brick of narcotics or currency. The package was completely worthless. The bastard, Eliza whispered. It was pure bait. It was a test to see if she would break. Or if she would open it and steal it. She saw the gun she had taken. She instantly dismantled it, scattering the pieces into the deep, dark water of the harbor. She kept the magazine. The bullets might be useful. She felt a wave of cold dread. She wasn't just working for Dario. She was now officially targeted by the Rizzo family. She was running for her life. And she still needed that tuition money. She decided to play his game. She grabbed a small, worn utility knife from her belt. She carved a single, clean cross into the salt block. A symbol of rejection. She wrapped the block again, making sure it looked exactly the same. She left the Siren and found the designated drop-off spot, an abandoned warehouse door. She placed the salt block carefully outside the door. Then she stepped into the shadows to watch. Dario was in the command center, waiting. He saw an old warehouse camera flicker to life on Renzo's screen. It was blurry. He saw a figure approach the door. She delivered it, Renzo sighed in relief. But Dario wasn't watching the current feed. He was watching a memory in his mind. Flashback, 5 seconds a younger Dario, maybe 8 years old. He is alone in a grand, empty living room. His father, the old boss, is shouting. The room smells of stale smoke and expensive leather. Dario is clutching a small, broken wooden toy soldier. His father throws a glass of wine against the fireplace. Control. You must show control, his father screams. Weakness is a wound. You never show the wound. Dario blinked, back in the present. The vision was gone. The Rizzo family isn't there, Dario stated. This is a secondary drop spot. She's too smart for the trap. She must have seen the green jacket. But the package is there, Marco pointed out. The mission is complete. The mission was to break her, Dario corrected, his voice hard. She broke my enforcer. He looked at the digital map again. Marco, get a clean car. No trackers. I'm going to the harbor. Dario knew his father's lesson, never show weakness. But Eliza made him feel weak. She made him crave a life where he didn't have to control everything. Her defiance was a challenge, but also an invitation to authenticity. He realized he didn't want to kill her. He wanted to understand her freedom. He desired the genuine connection he had never been allowed to possess. The desire was a secret he kept even from himself. Eliza waited. She knew the drop-off was meaningless. Dario would have people watching. But she didn't see anyone. She waited 20 minutes. Then, a black, untraceable Maserati pulled silently into the dockyard. It wasn't Marco driving. It was Dario. Alone. He got out of the car. He walked straight to the warehouse door. He retrieved the package. He weighed the cube in his hand. He looked around. He knew she was near. Eliza. I know you're here, Dario called out into the darkness. His voice was raw. Eliza remained silent behind the stacked nets. Dario unwrapped the package slowly. He saw the salt block. Then he saw the carving. The clean, defiant cross slashed into the white surface. A clear message, crucify your attempts to control me. He smiled, but not cruelly. It was a slow, genuinely admiring smile. You won the round, ragazza, Dario admitted, speaking to the shadows. You kept the package. You humiliated my man. You exposed my ambush. He walked back to his car. He looked back at the shadows one last time. But you made one mistake, Dario shouted, his voice echoing over the water. Eliza's heart pounded. What mistake? Dario got into the Maserati. He held up the gun she had thrown away. You left the magazine full of bullets behind, Eliza, he yelled. The bullets are mine, and they are unique. They are coated in a rare, untraceable synthetic metal I use only for high-value targets. This means I know who you have been shooting. He threw the magazine hard onto the dock. It clattered loudly. That magazine has your fingerprints all over it. And now, the police will find it. The car roared to life. Dario sped away, leaving the proof of her violence on the ground. Eliza stared at the dock. She had been so focused on the gun's destruction that she had forgotten the one thing that tied her to her past. Her fingerprints were on his specialized ammunition. She was instantly compromised. Salvatore Rizzo threw the salt block onto his mahogany table. The crystal salt cube fractured instantly. He laughed, a low, ugly sound. Valente wastes my time, Salvatore sneered. He risks an ambush for a brick of sea salt. His lieutenant, Vincenzo, studied the security footage. It showed the high-speed chase and Eliza's violent escape. It showed her defiance. Boss, look closer, Vincenzo urged. The package was nothing. The bait was everything. Valente risked a 3-car wreck to test her loyalty. She didn't open the package. She fought the man who tried to take it. Salvatore stopped laughing. He stared at the screen. The waitress's face was cold steel. He is obsessed with humiliating her, Salvatore mused. Or he is obsessed with her. Vincenzo nodded grimly. He showed his hand. He bought the bistro. He employs her. He threw away his most trusted man to protect her from a simple grab. She is not a waitress, Salvatore concluded, his voice suddenly sharp. She is a shield. She is a prized asset. Or, God forbid, she is his heart. Salvatore slammed his fist on the table. She is his weakness. She is our target. Find her routine. Tonight, she disappears. Meanwhile, Dario was back in his high-tech panic room. He was trying to track Eliza's magazine fingerprints. The prints were clean. They were registered to an expired alias in Rome. Another dead end. The girl is a phantom, Boss, Renzo reported, his eyes glued to the heat map. No credit score. No verifiable family. Just the secure trust fund. Dario dismissed the screen. He was watching a different one, live surveillance of the street outside the bistro. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Zoom in on the old flower cart, Dario ordered. Renzo zoomed in. An elderly woman was selling roses. She had been there for 6 hours. No one buys flowers at midnight, Renzo, Dario snapped. That's a Rizzo stakeout. They think she's valuable now. They think she's mine. Dario felt a sudden, cold rush of adrenaline. It wasn't fear for his business. It was pure, irrational panic for her. She's a pawn, Dario, Marco reminded him, stepping forward. We use her to pull out the people behind her trust fund. If they take her, we know who is backing her. Dario turned on Marco, his eyes blazing. If they take her, they will torture her for information I don't even have. She will break, Marco. And then they will know I was involved in the Rossi acquisition. Dario was lying. He didn't care about the acquisition. He cared about her breaking. He cared about her pain. He hated that he cared. I am going for a drive, Dario announced. He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his silenced Glock. You are going alone. Marco challenged. This is my mistake, Marco, Dario said, the words heavy with self-loathing. I dragged her into this. I will fix it. She is not my woman. She is not an asset. She is a loose end I must tie up personally. He knew that was a lie. He was going because he couldn't stand the thought of Salvatore touching her. Eliza was walking the dark, narrow stone pathway to her small apartment. The streetlights flickered. The sea air was cold. She felt the chill of being watched. She knew the danger had escalated. She didn't use the main street. She walked through a derelict, overgrown park. It offered more shadows, more escape routes. She held her keys tight between her fingers. Suddenly, 2 dark cars roared onto the path from opposite directions. They were cheap, beat-up sedans, blocking her escape instantly. They weren't using expensive security. They were using brute force. 3 heavyset men jumped out of the vehicles. They were Rizzo muscle. They moved silently. Eliza Moetti, the lead man, grunted. Salvatore wants to talk about your new employer. Eliza didn't answer. She took a fighting stance. She positioned her body toward the tight wall, limiting her attack angles. Come quietly, the thug ordered. He held a thick metal pipe. Before anyone could move, a black streak screamed around the corner. It was Dario's Maserati. Dario slammed the car, at full speed, into the side of the first Rizzo sedan. The crash was deafening. Metal screamed against metal. Airbags deployed. The Rizzo thug who was driving went unconscious instantly. The remaining 2 thugs froze. They stared at the ruined black Maserati. They stared at the passenger door flying open. Dario emerged from the wreck. He was breathing heavily. A thin cut bled just above his eye. He was focused only on Eliza. Get behind me, ragazza, Dario commanded, pulling his gun. I don't need your protection, Eliza retorted, even in this chaos. You need my bullets, Dario corrected, aiming the weapon. Now move. The lead Rizzo thug raised the pipe and charged Dario. Dario did not fire the gun. He moved quickly, using the car wreck as cover. He sidestepped the pipe and slammed the barrel of his Glock into the man's temple. The thug collapsed, unconscious. The third thug tried to flank them, moving toward Eliza. He was fast. Before Dario could pivot, Eliza moved. It wasn't a waitress moving. It was a fighter. She executed a low, sweeping kick. It was precise and lethal. The thug's knee buckled backward with a sickening snap. He screamed, clutching his leg, dropping his weapon. Dario stared at her. His eyes were wide with shock. That was not a move taught in self-defense classes. That was high-level, disciplined martial arts. Where did you learn that? Dario demanded, his voice barely a whisper. You weren't the only one who learned the definition of control, Eliza answered, her face emotionless. They stood side by side, Dario holding the gun, Eliza standing over the wounded thug. They were 2 broken halves of a perfect, dark machine. The sounds of sirens began to wail in the distance. The crash was too loud to ignore. We need to move, Dario said quickly. The police will trace this car to the Valente ownership. He grabbed Eliza's arm. He ignored her flinch this time. He was bleeding badly from his head wound. My apartment is 10 blocks north, Eliza said, pulling her arm free. The one place they won't look. Dario hesitated. Going to her apartment meant surrendering his control completely. It meant forced, intimate proximity. It meant revealing his wound to her. We go to the penthouse, Dario insisted, fighting his instinct. Your penthouse is under constant surveillance by every agency in Italy, Eliza countered. They will be there within 10 minutes. We go to my place. You need stitches, Valente. He looked at the blood dripping onto his cashmere sweater. He looked at her eyes, which were steady and calculating. She was right. He was compromised. Dario nodded reluctantly. Fine. Your apartment. But if this is another trap, I will not hesitate to end you. They began to walk into the shadows, the wrecked Maserati and the groaning bodies left behind as evidence. When they reached her tiny, anonymous apartment, Eliza locked the door. She looked at the blood on Dario's forehead. She retrieved a medical kit hidden deep inside her wardrobe. It was a sterile, military-grade kit. Dario watched her work. She was patching his wound with the steady hand of a battlefield surgeon. Who trained you? Dario asked, his voice rough. Eliza looked up from the suture needle. She leaned close to whisper, making sure he felt the heat of her breath. Eliza, my father didn't teach me wine pronunciation, Dario. He taught me how to kill without noise. Dario stared at her, stunned. The entire plot had just shattered. He wasn't dealing with a stubborn waitress. He was sheltering a killer. He was completely at her mercy. And he was in love with the danger. Eliza finished the last suture. The thread was barely visible on Dario's forehead. His breathing was heavy. He watched her movements, mesmerized by her control. The military-grade first aid kit was now neatly packed away. My father was a chef, Eliza said, answering his earlier question. A very good one. But he had other skills. He taught me to disarm a person using only balance. Your father was not just a chef, Dario stated. He rose slowly from the cramped kitchen stool. You are lying. You move like a weapon. You are bleeding through your expensive shirt, Eliza countered, deflecting. Focus on your pain, Dario. Not my past. Dario felt the insult. He also felt the truth. She owned this space. She owned the situation. He was her wounded prisoner. I need to go, Dario said. The Rizzo family will sweep the city looking for the black Maserati. I need to make a public statement. I need to show I am fine. Then you must go tonight, Eliza agreed. The Sirens Call Gala is happening right now. It is the biggest charity event of the year. The entire coast's underworld will be there. Dario froze. The Sirens Call Gala. He was supposed to attend with his consiglia. He had forgotten. That is perfect, Dario whispered. A public appearance. Total control re-established. You are still cut, Eliza pointed out. You have a concussion. And they will expect you to be with your consort, Isabella. Isabella is useless. Dario dismissed the model. She only knows how to spend money. I need someone who can watch my back. You are coming with me, Eliza. Eliza stared at him. I am a waitress. I have no gown. I have no invitation. I have no desire. I have a tailor, Dario said, grabbing his keys. We have an hour. You are my Tate. And you will wear a wire. I want every conversation recorded. 40 minutes later, Dario and Eliza stood at the entrance of the Grand Hotel. She wore a simple, sleeveless black gown. It was elegant. It showed the smooth, pale skin of her arms and neck. The dress was designed to hide the scar. Dario adjusted her necklace. He felt a sudden, electric heat where his fingers brushed her skin. The necklace was beautiful. It was also the communication device. This is a high-risk scenario, Eliza, Dario instructed. You will stand beside me. You will not talk to anyone unless I tell you to. You will listen for code words. Words like, the vineyard, the harvest, or the crew. I know more about the vineyard than you do, Dario, she murmured. And I do not take orders from a criminal. Tonight, you do, Dario hissed. My life depends on it. And your tuition money depends on it. They entered the vast ballroom. Chandeliers glittered like frozen waterfalls. The air was thick with perfume, power, and deceit. Dario, the wounded king, walked straight into the spotlight. The event was crowded with rivals. Dario saw Salvatore Rizzo watching him from the balcony. Salvatore's smile was predatory. Dario led Eliza toward the main auction table, where the famous 1945 Romani Conti was about to be sold. Stay alert, Dario muttered to Eliza. This wine is the key. It is the real prize. The Romani Conti is just prestige, Eliza corrected instantly. The real money is in the Bordeaux futures they are discussing near the bar. Dario paused. She was right. The auction was a distraction. The bar conversation was the real business deal. Her ability to instantly read the room unsettled him again. A respected, older rival, Nicola, approached Dario. Nicola was a former banker who laundered money through art. Dario, you look well for a man who totaled his car, Nicola said, smiling thinly. We were just discussing the leveraged futures market. Complex stuff, no? Dario needed to sound intelligent. He needed to prove he was in control. Of course, Nicola, Dario said, trying to remember Renzo's technical briefing. The securitized derivatives need careful handling against systemic volatility. Nicola raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. Dario was using big words, but they made no financial sense together. He was stumbling. Nicola began to smirk. Eliza leaned in quickly, speaking softly into Dario's ear. Her breath was warm against his neck. Tell him you are worried about the collateralized debt obligations being undervalued in the next quarter due to central bank liquidity constraints. Dario repeated the sentence instantly. The words were flawless, precise, and highly technical. Nicola's smirk vanished. His face went pale. My apologies, Dario. You are clearly well informed. Excuse me. Nicola walked away quickly. Dario stared at Eliza. She just used complex financial jargon to save him. He felt a rush of both deep gratitude and intense embarrassment. A waitress had just saved his financial reputation in front of a rival. How did you know that? Dario whispered, his pride wounded. I read the Financial Times, Eliza shrugged. It is a hobby. Dario pulled Eliza toward the bar. He had to keep her close. She was his only functioning brain tonight. He was bleeding confidence. Suddenly, a waiter carrying a tray of champagne bottles slipped directly in front of them. The crash was deliberate. A bottle rolled, spinning under Dario's feet. Dario didn't flinch. He was trained to spot an assassination attempt. He knew the bottle was the distraction. He scanned the room for the real threat, a shooter on the balcony, or a knife from the crowd. Dario, watch your left. Eliza yelled, loud enough for half the room to hear. Dario, expecting a bullet, pivoted hard left. He raised his arms to shield Eliza. But the threat was not a bullet. The waiter who had slipped had secretly attached a tiny electromagnetic device to the heel of Dario's shoe. The device was designed to transmit data, a mobile bug. Because Dario pivoted left, he accidentally stumbled backward and crushed the device under his heel. The plastic casing cracked audibly. The data transmitter was instantly destroyed. The waiter looked shocked. His mission had failed spectacularly. Eliza grabbed Dario's arm, holding him steady. My apologies, darling, she said loudly, forcing a smile for the crowd. You are still dizzy from the wound. The crowd tittered. Dario Valente, the fearsome Mafia boss, was so clumsy his date had to hold him up. Humiliation number 2. That was a listening device, Dario hissed at her. How did you see it? The way he adjusted his cuffs after he fell, Eliza explained. He was hiding the transmitter release switch. He was not looking at your head. He was looking at your shoe. Dario felt a strange surge of attraction. She was saving his life, humiliating his reputation, and doing it all with absolute, lethal competence. They moved to the far corner, near a large ice sculpture. Dario's mind was racing. He needed to know what the Rizzo family was planning. He looked up at the balcony. Salvatore Rizzo was now smiling widely. He had seen the entire scene, Dario being propped up by his date. The rumors would fly tonight. The word crew, Dario muttered. I heard Nicola use it. It means a prized vineyard. They are discussing the Rossi acquisition, Eliza confirmed, listening to the wire. They are planning to intercept the final contract tonight. The one that transfers the land ownership from the old family to your mother. Dario pulled her close, pressing her against the cold marble wall. Their bodies were almost touching. Where is the contract? Dario demanded, his voice low. It is not here, Eliza whispered back, maintaining the facade of a lover's spat. The contract is a digital file. It is stored on a secure network gateway that runs the hotel's lighting system. This was the final, devastating piece of technical jargon. The real contract was hidden inside the hotel's server core. How could you possibly know the security architecture of the Grand Hotel? Dario asked, his breath hot against her ear. He felt a deep, terrifying certainty. This woman was not just a waitress. She was an IT specialist, perhaps a hacker. Or worse. I know the network, Eliza admitted, her voice flat. The Rizzo family is planning to trigger a blackout at 1 a.m. When the lights go out, they will grab the contract from the core server room downstairs. It was 12:45 a.m. They had 15 minutes. Dario looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage, desire, and confusion. You saved my life twice tonight, Eliza, Dario said. Why? You are still paying my tuition, Dario, she replied, stepping back coldly. And the Rizzi family would kill me too. It's not personal. Dario pulled the microphone necklace from her neck. He crushed it under his foot. The surveillance was over. I am going to the server room, Dario announced. I will shut down the server myself. But I need you to create a diversion. A massive, room-clearing distraction. Eliza looked at the packed ballroom. What kind of distraction? Dario pointed to the auction stage. The auctioneer was currently introducing the Romani Conti. You have 5 minutes, Dario stated. You are going up on that stage. You are going to embarrass me in front of the entire city one last time. Eliza's eyes widened. She stared at the stage, then back at Dario. This was a whole new level of reckless exposure. Dario, you are going to outbid everyone on that Romani Conti. You are going to publicly spend 30 million euros you do not have. This room will clear itself when they realize I am laundering money through my peasant date. He smiled, a dark, manic expression. He was finally back in control. He was leveraging her defiance. Dario, go, Eliza. The auction is about to start. Go make your biggest mistake yet. Eliza walked toward the auction stage. Her body moved with rigid precision. Every eye in the ballroom followed her. She was wearing a simple black dress. She was about to ruin the career of Dario Valente. She knew what she had to do. She had to bid. She had to overspend. She had to create the most expensive, most public spectacle possible. Dario vanished into a service corridor. He was heading for the server core. He was counting on her to clear the room. Eliza reached the front row. The auctioneer, an oily man named Luciano, introduced the main lot, the 1945 Romani Conti. A bottle of history, ladies and gentlemen, Luciano crooned. Opening bid, 5 million euros. A bidder near the back, a portly industrialist, raised his paddle. 6 million. 7 million, shouted a rival from the middle. Eliza waited. She knew the rhythm. She had to wait for the silence. Luciano called for 10 million. The bidding stalled. Eliza raised her hand slowly. Her voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. Eliza, 30 million euros. The room gasped. It wasn't just the amount. It was the sudden jump. It was the look of pure, cold confidence on the waitress's face. Luciano stammered. 30 million? Madam, do you have that financial capacity? Ask my date, Eliza replied, pointing to the service corridor where Dario had just disappeared. He will cover the debt. He is the one who wanted the theatrics. The ballroom exploded into murmurs. 30 million euros for a single bottle of wine. Clearly, Dario Valente was using his new girlfriend for a massive, illegal money laundering operation. The entire room was instantly compromised by the public knowledge. The police would have to investigate. Everyone connected to the bid was now exposed. The rival families, including Salvatore Rizzo, watching from the balcony, panicked. They couldn't be associated with such blatant public crime. They started filtering toward the exits. The gala was effectively over. Eliza waited by the stage. The lights suddenly flickered. It was 1 a.m. The blackout was starting. But the lights did not fail. Dario had successfully interrupted the main server call. He had stopped the Rizzo family from getting the digital contract. The lights remained on, but the power fluctuations caused the hotel's internal music system to glitch. A high, grating whine filled the room. Salvatore Rizzo, seeing his plan fail, stormed down the stairs. He was furious. He was heading straight for Eliza. "You, whore. You ruined everything." Salvatore snarled, advancing on her. Eliza braced for a fight. She was ready to use the chopstick technique again. Then, a man stepped out of the shadows near the grand piano. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and handsome. He looked shockingly familiar. He had the same cruel eyes as Dario, but his hair was silver, and his skin was weathered. He wasn't Salvatore's man. He was an observer. This was Alessandro, the oldest, most powerful figure in the Valente family's history. Dario's estranged uncle. He was rumored to have retired completely. Alessandro walked straight past Salvatore Rizzo. He stopped directly in front of Eliza. He didn't look angry. He looked profoundly sad. "Eliza Moetti," Alessandro said, his voice deep and melodic. "I see you haven't forgotten your training." Eliza's blood ran cold. Her composure vanished. This was the first time Dario or the audience had seen genuine fear in her eyes. "Alessandro," she whispered, the name a painful curse. Alessandro smiled sadly. "It has been a long time since Rome, little bowed. I see you are still running." Salvatore Rizzo stopped his advance. He was stunned. The waitress knew the retired king of the Valente dynasty. "Alessandro, what is the meaning of this?" Salvatore demanded. "Who is this woman?" Alessandro ignored Salvatore. He reached out and gently touched the black dress on Eliza's arm. He felt the hidden scar underneath the fabric. "The scar you carry," Alessandro said, his eyes filled with immense, private sorrow. "Did you ever show Dario the mark?" Eliza shook her head silently. She couldn't speak. "It is a mark of the phoenix," Alessandro explained to the stunned crowd. "It means she was trained by the legacy." The term "the legacy" was old Mafia code. It meant the most brutal, private, and efficient assassination school run by the Valente family itself, centuries ago. It was only taught to direct, powerful bloodline members. Alessandro looked up, his voice ringing with ancient authority. "This woman is not a waitress, Salvatore," Alessandro announced. "She is a highly trained specialist. But more importantly..." Alessandro paused for the maximum dramatic effect. "Alessandro, more importantly, she is the daughter of my younger brother. She is Dario Valente's first cousin." The entire ballroom froze. The revelation hit like a physical shockwave. Dario Valente's greatest rival, his deepest obsession, the woman who had publicly ruined his reputation, was family. Eliza was the blood niece of Alessandro. She was Dario's cousin. "A lie!" Salvatore shouted, but his voice lacked conviction. "No lie," Alessandro confirmed, his eyes hardening. "She disappeared after her father was executed 10 years ago. She has been hiding in plain sight. She is a Valente, Salvatore. And you just tried to capture a Valente." Meanwhile, Dario was deep in the server core. He had ripped out the main network cable, preventing the remote data siphon the Rizzo family had planned. Mission accomplished. He walked out of the corridor, expecting to find Eliza gone, the ballroom empty. Instead, he walked into a stunned silence. Everyone was staring at Eliza. Dario saw Alessandro, whom he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. And he heard Alessandro's last, cold sentence. "She is a Valente." Dario looked at Eliza. He looked at Alessandro. He looked at the scar-covering fabric on her arm. The scar he had spotted. The scar that was a symbol of his family's violent, secret past. "Is this true?" Dario demanded, walking toward her. His voice was dangerously soft. Eliza finally found her voice. "Yes. My name is Eliza Moetti Valente. My father was your uncle's younger brother, Giovanni." Dario felt a double betrayal. Not only had she been lying, but she was a piece of the family history he had fought his entire life to escape. You came here for revenge, Dario accused, his gun still tucked under his jacket. You humiliated me tonight. Was this all a setup? No, Eliza stated, her eyes pleading for him to understand. I came here to hide. I took the waitress job because it was anonymous. My past only started when you walked into the restaurant and wouldn't leave me alone. Alessandro stepped between them. The girl is under my protection now, Dario. Protection? Dario scoffed. You trained her to kill. She is the last remnant of the legacy training program. She is dangerous. She is family, Alessandro countered. And the Rizzi family thinks she is your lover. This is a perfect storm. Alessandro looked at Dario with a terrifying certainty. Alessandro, Salvatore Rizzo is not leaving this hotel without a prize. He needs to eliminate the threat of the Valente assassin. You have two choices, Dario. Dario waited, his eyes moving between his powerful uncle and his dangerous cousin. Alessandro, choice 1, kill her now. You eliminate the threat. You eliminate the rival. And you eliminate the witness to your own weakness. Alessandro paused. Alessandro, choice 2, claim her publicly. Declare her your fiancée. Put a ring on her finger. That is the only way Salvatore will back down, because he cannot touch the blood of the boss's wife. Dario looked at Eliza's cold, defiant face. He had despised her arrogance. He had become obsessed with her competence. Now, he knew she was the key to his family's dark power. He had to choose between killing the woman he craved or being eternally bound to her. The room held its breath. The silence was absolute. Dario's hand moved slowly toward his pocket. He was either reaching for his gun or a ring. Dario's hand stopped hovering over his pocket. He stared at Eliza, then at his uncle, Alessandro. Salvatore Rizzo was 5 feet away, waiting for the choice. The tension was suffocating. Dario ignored Alessandro completely. He only looked at Eliza. You are a Valente, Dario stated, his voice tight with dangerous calm. You possess secrets about my family's oldest organization. You exposed my operation tonight. You cost me 30 million euros in a fake bid. Eliza stood her ground. And I saved your life twice tonight. I saved your financial reputation. I saved your server core. You owe me the chance to explain. Dario looked at Salvatore Rizzo. The rival boss was breathing heavily, anticipating murder. Dario made his decision. He pulled his hand from his pocket. He was holding neither the gun nor a ring. He was holding the necklace she had just worn. He tore the velvet box containing the olive pit from his other pocket. He looked at Eliza. You refused my gift before, cousin. He crushed the olive pit between his thumb and index finger. The wood splintered. He looked directly at Salvatore. The mistake was not hers, Salvatore, Dario announced, his voice ringing across the silent ballroom. The mistake was mine. I should never have allowed her to be a waitress. Dario threw the empty olive pit box onto the floor. Eliza Moetti Valente is not my fiancée, Dario declared. She is my consigliere, my chief advisor. She is the highest-ranking member of the Valente family. And she has been assigned the immediate task of cleaning up my current mess. The room murmured, confused. A consigliere? A woman? It was unheard of. But the title was powerful. It meant she was protected by the hierarchy. Salvatore Rizzo hesitated. A consigliere? You lie, Dario. That position is for a seasoned veteran. She is more seasoned than you know, Dario shot back, placing a protective hand on Eliza's back. He felt the cold shock of her skin beneath the silk. She reports only to me. And if you attempt to touch a member of my council, Salvatore, the war begins tonight. Alessandro smiled faintly. Dario had found a third, more brilliant path, elevate her status without marrying her. He had claimed her with rank, not love. The ballroom finally cleared, leaving only the security detail and the cleanup crew. Dario and Eliza sped away in a new, anonymous silver car. They were heading not for the penthouse, but for a secured, neutral safe house. Inside the car, the silence was explosive. Consigliere? Eliza finally asked, her voice laced with incredulity. You know that title is a death sentence if I fail. You won't fail, Dario said, focused on the road. You move like a ghost and think like a banker. You are too valuable to lose. You are still using me, Eliza observed, her tone flat. We are using each other, Dario corrected. Rizzo will not attack me directly, but he will target you. He thinks you are the weak link. We must work together to dismantle his operation. He pulled the car into an underground garage. He led her to a plain, concrete-walled apartment. It was stocked with food and guns. Renzo's voice crackled through a secure tablet left on the table. Boss, we have 2 confirmed threats. First, Rizzo is moving all assets. Second, the police are investigating the crashed Maserati. They have linked the Shell registration to a Valente offshore account. We expected that, Dario stated. There is a third threat, boss, Renzo added, his voice low. Your uncle, Alessandro. He just accessed the main Valente legacy vault. The one containing the original deed to all the family's southern properties. Dario stopped breathing. The original deed was the legal foundation of the Valente power structure. Why? Dario demanded. We think Alessandro is trying to force your hand, Renzo explained. He wants you to legitimize Eliza's position. If you marry her, he transfers the deed to her, locking down the family's future. Dario slammed his fist on the table. He wants to control me through her. Eliza stepped forward. Alessandro is scared, Dario. My father was killed because he was too close to the deed. Alessandro is not trying to control you. He is trying to protect the bloodline. How do you know that? Dario challenged. The mark of the phoenix, Eliza revealed, pushing up her sleeve fully. The scar was long and thin, cutting across her forearm. It was the shape of a crooked, winged dagger. It is the legacy symbol. It means the bearer is the deed protector. Dario stared at the scar. It wasn't a clumsy wound. It was a birthright. They had to retrieve the deed from Alessandro's vault before the police or Rizzo could interfere. They had to work as a team. Alessandro's vault is in the old family estate outside the city, Dario said, pulling a map onto the table. It requires 2 access codes. Mine and his. My father knew a third way, Eliza said quietly, pointing at a small vent on the map. The drainage system. It was designed for emergencies. Suddenly, the security lights in the safe house flickered off. The room was plunged into darkness. Rizzo is here. Dario shouted. He scrambled for the Glock. A voice boomed through the ventilation system, distorted and menacing. Dario Valente, your new consiglia will not save you now. The gas began to pump into the room. It was thick, sickening chlorine gas. Dario choked instantly. He dropped the gun. He collapsed against the wall, his lungs seizing. He was panicking. Eliza moved like lightning. She ignored the gas. She knew this was a paralysis agent. She grabbed Dario's arm and dragged his heavy body toward the small, reinforced pantry. She threw open the door. Hold your breath, she commanded, dragging him inside. She slammed the pantry door shut. She didn't stop there. She grabbed a towel, dunked it in the water carafe, and quickly taped it over the thin crack beneath the door. She then pulled a small, silver pin from her hair and used it to jam the internal deadbolt. The security door was reinforced. She created an airlock. Dario was coughing violently, tears streaming from his eyes. He watched her work. She was calm, precise, and completely focused on saving him. She didn't hesitate. She had saved his life from a chemical attack. 5 minutes later, the gas dissipated. They stumbled out of the pantry. They had to leave immediately. They will breach the main door in minutes, Eliza whispered. They ran through the silent safe house, heading for the back exit. They reached the secondary escape ladder leading to the service tunnel. Suddenly, a tripwire flashed across the tunnel entrance. A booby trap. A grenade, rigged to the wire. Eliza stopped dead. It's pressure sensitive. Dario acted instantly. He pushed Eliza hard against the wall. He threw his entire body over the grenade, shielding her with his mass. The grenade did not explode. Dario had noticed the wire was thin and poorly secured. Dario, with rage, it's a fake. They want us to stay here. He ripped the fake grenade away. It was a metal can filled with smoke bombs. It exploded instantly, filling the tunnel with blinding, choking smoke. It was a diversionary smoke screen to keep them trapped. Dario grabbed Eliza's hand. He pulled her through the smoke. He was coughing, his eyes burning. He held her hand tight, pulling her into the unknown tunnel. They stumbled out of the tunnel and into the dark sewer system, soaking wet and covered in filth. They were safe, for now. They looked at each other, their faces streaked with soot and survival. "You jumped on the grenade," Eliza said, her voice shaking slightly for the first time. It was a cheap distraction. Dario dismissed it, but his eyes were wide. He was still trying to deny the selfless act. "It could have been real," Eliza pressed. "You protected me. You saved me from the gas," Dario countered, pulling his hand free. He hated the warmth of her touch. Neither of them admitted the growing feelings. They only admitted the utility. They were two highly lethal forces that needed the other for survival. "Dario, I need the deed. You are the protector. We are going to the old estate. Now." "Eliza, the deed is guarded by the Legacy's oldest security system. A system my father designed." Cliffhanger. Eliza pulled a small, ancient silver key from a hidden pocket sewn into her dress lining. It was the only key that could open the Legacy vault. "Eliza, but the final security measure is not a code, Dario. It's a blood test. Only a true Valente can access the vault. And the system recognizes only two specific bloodlines." "Dario, who are they?" Eliza looked him straight in the eye. "Eliza, you and my father. Giovanni. The system needs the blood of a dead man. We must find a viable blood sample before Alessandro or Rizzo beats us there." She was leading him into a vault that required a dead man's DNA. The emotional and physical danger had just become macabre. This is the crucial turning point where the emotional depth reaches its peak and justifies the entire slow burn attraction. I will apply the rhythmic variation here, prioritizing the emotional weight and Dario's stunned reaction. Dario and Eliza emerged from the sewer system into the pre-dawn darkness. They were filthy, exhausted, and running on pure adrenaline. Eliza clutched the ancient silver key. "The estate is 20 kilometers south," Dario panted, pulling a pair of emergency keys from his sock. "We take this service van. It's untraceable." Inside the rattling van, they ripped off their ruined formal clothes. They stripped down to basic underlayers. They started cleaning the soot and grime from their skin using bottled water. The close quarters were tense. "The deed protector," Dario said, breaking the silence. "The Legacy system is archaic. It needs the blood of a dead man. My father's brother, Giovanni." Eliza looked at the scar on her arm. "Giovanni was my father. He knew the risk. He prepared the blood sample for this day. It is hidden where only he could hide it." "Where?" Dario demanded. Eliza pulled a tiny, leather-bound book from a hidden lining in her abandoned gown. It was a centuries-old copy of Dante's Inferno. "My father had a safe room," Eliza explained. "Near the old trattoria. The one you bought." Dario stared at her, stunned. The trattoria was always the key. The wine mispronunciation was fate. The Pappardelle al Singhiale, Dario realized. The secret recipe wasn't just a recipe. It was the key to the vault. "The recipe contains a list of 13 ingredients," Eliza confirmed. "Each ingredient corresponds to a layer of the Inferno. Only the correct sequence opens the safe room." Dario felt a flash of frustration. This was too complicated. "You are telling me our family's entire power structure relies on a pasta recipe and a literary reference?" "The strongest walls are built with absurdity, Dario," Eliza countered. They drove in silence toward the bistro, their tension thick enough to cut. They arrived at the small, empty bistro. Dario unlocked the service door. The place smelled of old wine and fear. Eliza walked straight to the kitchen. She went to the old wooden cabinet where her father used to store his finest spices. The cabinet was empty. Eliza ran her hand along the back shelf. She pressed a faint seam. A small, hidden compartment clicked open. Inside was a single, crystal vial filled with dark, viscous liquid. The blood sample. Dario approached her slowly. He looked at the vial. He looked at her scarred arm. "You have fought your whole life to protect this, haven't you?" Dario asked, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "You were never running from me, or from Rizzo. You were running from the deed." I was running from the life that killed my father, Eliza admitted. Giovanni tried to leave the family. Alessandro wouldn't let him. That's why he was targeted. The legacy doesn't allow retirement. She held the vial up. Let's retrieve the deed, Dario. I need to finish this debt to my father and finally be free. They drove to the Valente family's coastal estate. It was a fortress built into the cliff face, overlooking the churning Tyrrhenian Sea. It was beautiful, ancient, and terrifying. The vault was hidden beneath the chapel. Dario used his key card to open the outer layer. Inside, the final vault was a wall of polished granite. In the center was a small, ancient-looking bronze lock. Eliza inserted the silver key. It turned with a heavy, satisfying click. The granite wall slid aside, revealing a smaller, final door. Engraved on the door was the image of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Beneath it, a small indentation for the blood test. My father's final challenge, Eliza whispered. She unscrewed the vial and poured the blood into the indentation. The liquid was absorbed instantly. A deep, automated voice echoed through the stone chamber. DNA recognized. Welcome, Giovanni Valente. The vault door hissed open. Inside, the vault was not filled with jewels or cash. It was filled with ledgers, legal documents, and one single, ornate leather box containing the original deed, the physical title to all Valente property, going back 300 years. Dario reached for the box. Wait, Eliza said, grabbing his wrist. Eliza looked past Dario, past the vault, into the shadows of the chapel. Her eyes were far away, filled with memory. I was never afraid of you, Dario, Eliza said, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. Not even when you threatened to kill me. Because I knew you long ago. Dario frowned, confused. We met at the restaurant. That was the first time. No, Eliza insisted. She released his arm and walked toward a stained glass window depicting Saint Michael fighting a demon. 10 years ago. I was 12. My father had just been executed. The Rizzo family was hunting me. They cornered me in a warehouse near the train yards. She leaned her head against the cold glass. Dario watched, speechless. They were going to kill me. They were going to make my father's mistake vanish, Eliza continued. I was small. I was hiding behind a stack of crates. I was terrified. Eliza, and then you arrived. Dario shook his head, denial etched on his face. Impossible. I was in Milan that month. I was at university. You came to the warehouse for a private meeting with your father, Eliza revealed. You were 22. You were arrogant, loud, and dressed in a terrible leather jacket. Dario closed his eyes. He remembered the leather jacket. He remembered that meeting. You were arguing with your father, Eliza explained. You were screaming about the family business. You hated the violence. You hated the crew of the wine. You hated the legacy. Eliza, you were so loud, Dario. You were so consumed by your own rage against the life you were forced into. She turned to face him, tears finally spilling down her face. Eliza, you were so loud, you scared the Rizzo assassins away. They heard your voice and they fled, thinking it was a raid. They thought you were coming for them. Dario was completely still. A mafia boss, feared across the coast, undone by a memory he didn't even know he had created. He had inadvertently saved her life through his youthful, privileged rage. Eliza, you saved me, Dario. You were my hero for 10 years. You were my escape route. That is why I knew you couldn't kill me. That is why I was never afraid. He became speechless. The tough exterior of the mafia boss shattered. His entire identity, built on control and fear, was based on a lie. She was not a rival. She was a living piece of his forgotten past. The silence was shattered by a loud, metallic grinding from above. The outer vault door was being forcibly breached. Rizzo! Dario shouted. He found us. No, Eliza corrected, her survival instinct snapping back into place. Rizzo would use explosives. That is Alessandro. He's using the hydraulic press from the old oil line. He is trying to trap us in the vault. Dario realized. He is forcing you to make the final choice, Eliza said, grabbing the deed box. He wants you to legitimize the bloodline. Not for the family. For the city. She grabbed Dario's arm and pulled him toward the small, dark passage at the back of the vault. There is an escape tunnel behind the deed box, Eliza explained rapidly. It leads out to the cliff face. We have minutes. They scrambled into the narrow tunnel. Dario was still reeling from her confession. He followed her blindly. He was not leading. She was his guide, his protector, his unexpected family. They reached the exit, a small, rusted iron door set into the cliff face, 50 feet above the crashing waves. They emerged onto the dangerous, slippery cliff path. The sun was just beginning to rise over the sea. The gold light illuminated the path of peril. Dario looked at the deed box in her hands. He looked at the vast, dangerous estate. What now, consiglia? Dario asked, the title now tasting real, permanent. Eliza didn't look back at the estate. She looked at the rising sun. Eliza, we disappear, Dario. We sell the deed to the city, use the money to pay off the Rizzo family, and start a new life. We dismantle the legacy together. She looked at him, her eyes fierce and honest. But you have to choose. Me, or the family. Dario looked at the deed box. He looked at the woman who had saved his life twice in 2 days and whose past was now his future. He made his final choice. Dario grabbed the box from her hand. He didn't open it. He lifted it high over his head, above the crushing waves. Dario, if this deed is the reason my father was a criminal, and yours was executed, then it is worthless. He threw the original deed, the legal foundation of the Valente Mafia, into the sea. It was his final surrender of control. The deed sank instantly. Eliza, whispering you are free, Dario. The sound of Alessandro's hydraulic press stopped. The old boss had heard the crash of the box hitting the water. The legacy was dead. Eliza took his hand. They began to walk along the treacherous cliff path, toward the small, remote town of Freedom. They were two broken people, walking away from their past, together. Their future was chaos, but their bond was now absolute. That's the end of their first escape. Did Dario make the right choice? Their future is chaos, crime, and culinary arts. Follow or subscribe now for more.